6 o'clock Wednesday, live here on the radio, is when we do the thing that they tell us not to do. Just, hey, can you chill out on reading the comments? It's not good for your mentals. You should really just kind of post your stuff and move on as a content creator. But no. We see you. We hear you. Listeners, viewers, fans of your favorite teams that we talk about 3 hours a day, live between 4 and 7 on the Team 980. We hear you. We see you. And thus, despite the warnings, when they tell us, do not ever enter those comment sections. What do, Anthony Haney, each and every Wednesday at 6 p.m.?
Mr. Craig Hoffman.
Yep.
We read those comments, baby.
Yeah, we do. You know it's going to be really funny? Slash is really funny for the viewing audience on that. Your internet is laggy as hell right now. So the sound, one, you're a blurry fist-pumping mess. And two, the sound lag on compared to the video is just not remotely going to be matched up for anybody. This is why they tell us to stay off the internet. It lets us down. Let's see if the internet can redeem itself with the comments themselves here on the Hoffman Show. First, Anthony, actually, call back to last week's Never Read the Comments. We got two things housekeeping-wise we got to clean up. So there was a comment about... I made some analogy about wandering through the woods, and I was in the clear, and someone else was like, do like Jim Zorn and make it about whitewater rafting. And I was like, that's definitely a reference to something, but I don't know the reference. Can someone please leave a comment and let me know the reference? Because I did a very quick Google and couldn't find it. Well, someone who I presume is named Casey Reader, their handle is Reader Casey, did indeed do that for us. And he said, Zorn was trying to think of a metaphor to connect for the players in the locker room while he was talking about what they needed to do on the field or something like that. And he asked if anyone had done any whitewater rafting. And only 2 white players raised their hand. And he just went ahead with the metaphor anyway. Someone, I think it was Fred Smoot, said something like, well, I guess that's why they call it whitewater rafting. It was one of the anecdotes that came out after he got fired to explain his oddness and failure to connect with the locker room. I'm pretty sure Dan Steinberg reported it. Reader Casey, you get our trophy this week for best comment, for being responsive, entertaining us, and giving us the insight that we didn't know that we needed. Also, that is such a Fred Smoot thing to do. That is hysterically funny. Also, Anthony... on the housekeeping front, we have to follow up with our guy, Merle. You'll remember from last week's Never Read the Comments, Merle said, I'm starting to believe that the owners don't want Josh Harris as an owner. Plus, Dan has dirt on everyone. I believe Tanya Snyder doesn't want to sell the team, to which I responded, your consistency of bad takes is incredible, because Merle is a frequent commenter. And then Merle said, we will see July 20th. So I waited. Till July 20th. And what did I do in my incredible pettiness after the sale was finalized? I went back to the comment from Merle. And by the way, Merle is spelled M-E-R-L. Merle Garrett. Merle, an absolute gem. But because it's just M-E-R-L, we refer to him now and forever forward as Merle. I said to the We Will See July 20th, we sure did, Merle. And he said shortly thereafter, I'm happy to take the L, laughed, and said, love your show. So, Merle, congratulations on having an absolutely fantastic attitude, being a great sport about us having some fun with your very bad take. And thus, we continue forward with the rest of the comments. All right, this first one, actually first two from the latest edition of Take Command. Logan and I talked about a bunch of offensive innovation and how teams, and specifically Kansas City over the last couple of years, which had a guy by the name of Eric Bieniemy, might have heard of him, and they really effectively started to use their backs to chip in pass protection. And someone Alan Fish commented, actually just 36 minutes ago, that he really wishes he could have adequately explained some of these concepts to friends back in 2012. I was never on the RG3 bandwagon, even as a fan, and got a ton of bleep for that. It's not so easy to explain that RG3's play fakes are vastly superior to the rest of the league, though, or why that play was wide open. Would love to chat with Logan about that dynamic or hear him explain what changed between 2012 and 2013 and his own thoughts. Would make for a fascinating episode, if not exactly the most timely. We were also talking about Robert and kind of the, obviously, when you're talking about evolution, and it's me and Logan goes back to that 2012 team that was so ahead. And, what happens is when you start to do things that the league hasn't seen, teams don't know how to react to it. So at the time, some of these ball fakes that RG3 would do, things that he did in college at Baylor, would throw the league for a loop, because it's like, our key is supposed to be what he's doing with the ball, and so we follow what looks like a handoff, and now all of a sudden he's open, or he's created just a little bit bigger of a window to create a wide open throw. And so that is what some of these teams are doing now with their play action games, for instance, where in fact the ball fakes aren't even that good. But if the linebackers are reading a tight end or a guard or a running back in the way he moves, the ball fake becomes the least relevant part of the play action. In fact, there are teams that run play action fakes in the NFL that don't even do the ball fake anymore. They will essentially do what is a half rollout or a sprint out, where the offensive line, say, will fake an outside zone to the left, so the widest possible, or a wide zone even to the left. Just the most left running play that you can think of. And the quarterback will, on the snap, not even pretend to go hand the ball off to the running back. He will sprint right. And what happens is the linebackers see the flow of the offensive line. They see the flow of the running back. And they, even if they take just a couple of steps the wrong way, maybe the tight end that was on the left, on the edge of the line of scrimmage, runs with the quarterback back across right. You flick, the defense is going the wrong way, their momentum is carrying them the wrong way, and you pick up an easy gain. Sometimes, with the right running quarterback, that turns into a kind of a naked situation where he just goes out and runs. Maybe you now get a one-on-one on the outside with a receiver, and your pass protection is the fake. If one guy doesn't fall for it, your quarterback's exposed, but it's worth the risk. And those kinds of things happen as offenses got more innovative and learned what to really manipulate with defenses as defenses evolved over the last decade, and obviously before that, and things evolve, adapt, etc. On that same post, this was a comment from Tim. What's up, Tim? Excellent job, Craig and Logan. Thank you. You're must listen to. It does seem like EB gets protection, alignment, ship help, screens, RPO, etc. But Mahomes makes a lot of coaches look good. Even if EB gets it, don't the O-line personnel matter? Will Washington be able to control the line of scrimmage to get 2 or 3 yards on short downs, or enough time for Howell to hit a wide receiver that is breaking free? I'll add on to Tim's comment. Mahomes is freakishly accurate. So does Sam Howell actually hit the wide receiver? Yeah, absolutely. Offensive personnel matters. And offensive line personnel matters. What I think our point is, and what Logan's point is that what Bieniemy does schematically will make their jobs easier. If you just have to set back and pass pro one-on-one against Micah Parsons, you're dead. If Micah Parsons knows it's a pass play and it's a 7-step drop and you're one-on-one. If Micah Parsons either gets chipped or thinks the chip is coming, or has to stay a little bit more patient in his rush because there's a play action fake, or is concerned about a ball being thrown quickly over his head because there's RPO looks, or any of the other things that we're talking about here. We talked about jet sweeps in this episode. We talked about all the different ways that you can create just a little bit of hesitation. And NFL offensive linemen, even at the Andrew Wiley, Charles Leno level, good, professional, but not elite. Those little things can make their success rates so much higher than if they just have to go one-on-one with an elite pass rusher. And there's plenty of them in this division, nevertheless, on the rest of the schedule. So, yes, absolutely it matters. But I think what we've seen in Kansas City is they actually don't have a ton of elite linemen. They haven't in a while. They've got a couple. Creed Humphrey, their center's awesome. And a couple of their linemen are very, very, very good. But they also, in part, are very, very, very good because Bieniemy schemed it up well along with Andy Reid and Matt Nagy and the whole deal. And because Mahomes does get the ball out quickly and he's able to run around and avoid stuff. So, and look, like the way teams play Mahomes because they're terrified of certain things that he does is also a factor. That's going to be the big thing. But if Bieniemy can dictate coverages and personnel groupings with his own personnel and by threatening, the deep ball, not just because people are afraid that Mahomes will fling one sidearm 50 yards, but because Sam Howell does have the requisite arm strength and they've got a ton of speed on the outside and they show that consistently they pressure teams vertically, like that's going to affect how much you blitz and things like that. Because if you try to blitz and take someone out of coverage and there's a wide open gap and Howell can read it out properly, that's high risk living for defenses that typically don't want to live high risk in the NFL. Never read the comments here on The Hoffman Show. We do this live each and every Wednesday, 6 p.m. here on the radio on the Team 980. Of course, you can also live stream us if you are a YouTube watcher, youtube.com/@theteam980. Go ahead and subscribe, and every single day when we go live, you'll get a notification. Makes it nice and easy to click on your smartphone or tablet, or we will be on your highest recommended videos when you open the YouTube app on your smart TV. We talked to Peter Rosenberg this week, good friend of mine, obviously longtime pundit on DC sports. He's a huge fan who is in the media business, now in New York. And we talked about the name quite a bit and the rebrand possibilities, and that's where most of the comments are. There's a lot of them, and that's actually, there's other videos that we did where there were comments on this as well. Let's try to get through some of them. And I think the thing that I will reiterate both on the front end here and on the back end is there's a lot of varying opinions on what Josh Harris and company should do with this name. GBRV8IM says, agree, Warriors or no name just for the military soldiers. I think there's a large group of people that like the military connection and think that's a good thing, especially in the D.C. area where obviously we have the Pentagon, we have Andrews Air Force Base, and all the other, military hubs here as we are the center of government. And people will like to tell you that we're the most powerful city in the world. There's other folks that look at the connections between the military and sports in America and some of the almost propagandist nature of that, or in some people's view, and if I'm being totally honest, like I see this as well, the propagandist nature of some of the ways in which sports and the military get tied, and it's uncomfortable, and they don't want that. Like those are two of the varying opinions, and trying to keep everybody happy is very, very difficult. So here you got someone saying like Warriors or no name at all. It's got to be military. Or, some people like Warriors because there's a Native American imagery. I'm also in the group, admittedly, that thinks we just, I think a league run by a bunch of white folks in America where the history of how we treat, one, obviously coming over and basically conquering Native American land, and, also how the interactions have been between the citizens of the United States and the U.S. government and Native American tribes since we've been here, not exactly the best neighbors. So I just think that if we can avoid that imagery, I think it's good because it does feel very wrong to a lot of people and it does hurt a lot of people. And if we can, there's so many options out there that don't have that baggage. And so why not do the thing without the baggage? And that's just me analyzing it, not me going ahead and putting my name in the group that says I'm personally against it, right? If I'm just looking at it purely as an analyst, if I say I don't have an opinion, I'm looking at the opinions of the masses, then why not do the thing that doesn't upset a large group of people and doesn't cause hurt to the group of people who you'd be naming the team after or using the imagery of? There are plenty of options available without that, so let's go down one of those paths. But again, there is so much here in terms of trying to find where the majority of the fan base is. Nevertheless, any outside group that may or may not be referenced in any particular name, from a Native American group to the Golden State Warriors, who have a lot of intellectual property, and you get a lot of lawyers involved. So, again, complicated. Brian Mulholland says, though, Commanders is a bad name. I can't say literally anything would have been better, but there's a whole lot of other choices that they could have gone with. I'd say importance of a change on a 100-point scale is 70. Can you live with Commanders if you really want to? Sure. If you stack enough winning and history behind any name, you can overcome a bad name, but that won't make it not a bad name. It would just be an eternal drag that you overcame, and let's count the ways Commanders is a bad name. This is a long comment, by the way, and actually, Anthony, I edited this comment down, but I thought there were a lot of good points, so I'm gonna try to read the abridged version of the ways in which Commanders is a bad name, according to Brian Mulholland, 2467. Number one, it's generic. If you wanted a military theme, generals or warriors, or hell, even admirals would be better. Commanders is so generic, it dilutes that supposed connection. 2, it's a mouthful. Washington is already a long city name. Pairing it with a long nickname is a bad choice. What's worse, Commanders is a word that lacks good rhythm. And so stick Washington in front of it, and it's a mouthful that almost feels like a tongue twister, even though it's not, because the words lack a good flow. I would just like to pause there, Anthony Haney, and say, there are creative geniuses who came up with a whole song, Left Hand Up, that seemed to just fine conquer the rhythm of Commanders. I'm just saying, I think Brian Mulholland, 2467, might need to be a little bit more creative. Left Hand Up. Anthony, thoughts?
I mean, people just don't like change. You know, it takes some time.
I was looking more for thoughts on rhythm in the song, but sure, your take on the actual name
I was
itself.
Getting there.
Okay.
No, I was getting there. It was more so just, you know, you got to find, like, what, I don't know. I don't know how to.
That's very clear. All right, I'm going to continue with Brian Mulholland, and I'm going to get Anthony off the screen. Number 3, no good nickname. Now, given its length, one could overlook that if there was a good shortening. San Francisco 49ers is a mouthful, but Niners is such a natural and easy nickname that it mitigates the Commanders having no good shortening. Are they the commies? The Durs? Craig has his Take Command podcast, but if it doesn't exist, there's going to be a Going Commando podcast someday. That name is highly mockable. Anthony, should we start the Going Commando podcast?
Going Commando podcast. Nah.
Thank you. Okay, good answer there. Number 4, it will forever link the team to Snyder and remind us of him. The fact is, this is Dan's name. You have an opportunity to wash that stain clean. Heck, even if you changed it to something just as bad, like the Washington Human Beings, it would be better than Commanders because it isn't Dan's name. Sorry for the rant, but this name really should go. It's not like I'm going to leave over it. If it were, it'd have already been gone, but I want the name changed. I think as much fun as we had with all of those points, there are some really good points there for sure. This next one from C. Jackson 1717. Is there a need to change the name? No, but 3 reasons why they should. 1, if you spend $6 billion on your new franchise, you should be able to name it whatever you want, especially since no one is married or attached to the current name Commanders. Again, I would say, except for the folks who came up with the Left Hand Up song. Do what you got to do. Number 2, do what you got to do to win over the fan base, and the vast majority of the fan base really hates the name Commanders. 3, the new name hopefully will be long-term / permanent, so it completely makes sense to start anew and clean the team of Daniel Snyder's fingerprint. I think that those are really good points as well. Like, to be clear, I am not anti name change here. I do think that there are some complications that folks do not consider of how hard this is. And having talked to some of the folks who were involved in this process, I know how much trouble it was the first time around to free up the correct intellectual property, to make sure that you weren't going to offend any particular group, or that, you know, if you were going to touch on certain themes, that people were cool with it. And some of this was driven by Snyder. Like, people didn't want to be associated with Snyder. You know, if you're like the Golden State Warriors and you watch what's happening in Washington, there's no way that you're like, yep, we're willing to share a name with them. And I think now that could change. So I do think there could be more options on the table, and maybe a name like Red Wolves that was completely tied up. And I know people look at like, yo, you're an NFL team. How can you not just sue Washington or Arkansas State and free up that name? because that's not how intellectual property works. And by the way, that's a good thing. You don't want people with money and power just to be able to sue people and unlock their ideas, unlock their property, and benefit off of it. That's good for things and reasons that have nothing to do with sports names. But if you are the holder of said intellectual property and you get to decide who you share it with, sharing it with Josh Harris and a new exciting thing is different than sharing it with a guy who's under 6 or 7 or 8 or 25 million different investigations from Congress to the feds to 3 different state/district jurisdictions and the league that he's a part of. So I do think that is important to point out and something that Josh Harris has going for him in a major way moving forward. I did think this sequence of comments to wrap up here kind of encapsulated this. Tim Rake says, lifetime Washington fan that's super excited for the new ownership. I'll reserve my comments on saying I can no longer feel shame towards the franchise once the name is changed. Then you have RB1991 saying, so far so good, change the name to Red Hogs or Red Wolves. And then you have Renji26 say, agree to both the comments above, need 100% to be cleansed from this franchise. I'll be proud to be a fan once that's completed. People are all over the place on this, and trying to find a consensus point in the fan base is futile. And to be honest, this is kind of the last time I plan on talking about it. I didn't come into this segment thinking that, but I'm definitely leaving it feeling that way, where obviously it's going to be a topic that comes up from now or every now and again, and we'll touch on it when we have to. It is something certainly we'll be monitoring in the background. But now with the season going to start, or set to start, and nothing imminent going to happen, and seeing that nobody seems open to changing their mind or kind of gathering around a consensus opinion, I do not plan on talking on this, and certainly hope we have more important and more pressing things to talk about over the next 6 months than the name. I know that's really important to a lot of people. I'm not trying to push that away. And in 6 months, when the season's over, we can talk about it again, especially if they open up that conversation and say we're looking to change it. But for right now, thank God it's time for football. And, just enjoy the season. That's what I would say. Anyone who's like, I can't enjoy it because of the name. It's a name. The football is the football. The players are the players. They're the human beings here that I do think, have obviously been through a lot. The former employees went through far more. But the players, they're the reason, and the love of the game is the reason you fell in love with it in the first place, not a name. So I would just say enjoy it. But yeah, you're a human being of free will. So, do what you like.
What's up, kiddos? It's your boy Clinton Yates from ESPN. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980. Tell your mama I said what's up.